Okay, class, in an extension of learning about values, we're going to be doing a series of grayscales, an 11-step grayscale, a simple 5-step grayscale, and a continuum or gradient of just light to dark. And what I'm holding here is something that's used in a more advanced class that we do, and this is done with paint. But it gives a good representation of values, and it starts with 0. I like to use 11 steps because it matches in terms of how you would work on the computer. So if this is a color on a computer, solid black, you deal with opacities on the computer. If it was a printing process, you would deal percentages of how much ink is covering the white paper. So here's the white paper, 10% gray, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% black. Okay, this band that's down the middle is a 35% gray. And we're not going to be doing that, but that's done to understand the illusion. This is the same gray that goes from the top to the bottom. And we look at it along the top, it looks darker against those light colors. And when we look at it at the bottom, it tends to look lighter against the dark. And the illusion is that down here, it actually almost looks like it's lighter than it is up there. But it's actually the exact same band. Values, if you break into 3 groups, and we're going to do something called a value pattern exercise as a next project. You have high key, mid key, and low key. So light values are considered more upbeat, mid values are considered more serious, if you will, and low key, really dark values are considered more somber. So we're going to get rid of this because, yes, you do not have to do this sheet, and we'll do something a lot more simple. What I've done here, even though it's complete and you're going to have snapshots to work from, up here is just a simple drawn by hand, roughly 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch squares that go from a light, darker, middle value, darker, and the full intensity of black. So it's 5 steps. What we're more concerned with is this 11-step grayscale, which is similar to what you've just seen. And if one was to hold a ruler against there, this comes out to like 5.5 inches. These are 1/2 inch intervals. So we draw a line here. We make tick marks in terms of every 1/2 inch till we get to 11 steps. And then we drop down some vertical lines. Okay, we put a base on it. I have 2 inches. You don't really have to do 2 inches. You could do it as 1.5 inches. If you really want to even have less coverage with your pencils, you could do it 1/2 inch by 1 inch. I'm really not that picky with it, but I want you to go through these 11 steps. Notice I don't have them in numbers. I have them in percent, 0%, 10, 20, all the way up to 100%. So with your metal rulers, do this the best you can, measuring, trying to be neat, trying to make areas, ruled out lines. So where these tick marks that you have, I'm using an angle, I still have to buy a metal ruler if you can believe it, because mine are all in the school. We're dropping these vertical lines every 1/2 inch to make this grid, and then we're filling in these grids starting from super light. I can't tell you how, this one is white, how light you have to strike that pencil to keep this really light. The tendency is to work and get dark too fast. By the time you're up to 70, 80%, all of a sudden it's like you've run out of darkness and you have full intensity and there's nowhere to go. So be careful. Sometimes a good way to do it is to divide and conquer. Do a really light value for the 10%, do the 100% black, okay, and then put in like a middle value and start to work between all them and adjust it as you're going forward. There's also pencils to be considered. What I've done here is started with a B pencil. You could start with B or HB and stay very light and going darker. And then I graduated to a 4B lead through here to try and get that lead a little bit blacker, softer. Remember, softer, you typically darker as you go into the high numbers with the B's. You know, when you get all the way to H, by the way, not to confuse everybody, but you have 2H, 4H, those actually become lighter. But as you go this way in the B pencils, the higher the number, the softer the lead, the darker. So when it gets to the very end, I actually used a 6B through here, so I could really achieve a pretty strong black. To get blacker than that, you'd have to be using like a charcoal pencil. So that's it. You're going through here and just trying to make all these 11 steps. Remember, the first one is white. You're leaving the white of the paper, and then 10%, 20, and so on. And like I said, the fallacy, many times students do this, and before you know it, you're going too dark, too fast, and you have nowhere to go to keep graduating up to those dark values. So again, 11 steps. If you look at a color wheel that you would buy, a lot of times these are done in like 9 steps and the numbers are reversed, and that was way back when there weren't computers. And what I do is I always teach this based on 11 steps, because it matches. If some of you work with Photoshop or Illustrator or any kind of visual program, and you're working with tints and opacities, this locks into that same mentality. 100% of a certain ink or color that you have on the screen. And then if you were going to opacities, it's only 90%, 80%. 10% really, for all intents and purposes, is just an extremely thin opacity of that color. And if it was a printing process, it would mean that you'd have tiny, minute dots covering the white paper to make that really light value. So values, as you're going to see in the next few classes and projects, values are extremely important part of drawing. They're extremely important if you're a painter, and they're extremely important if you're a graphic designer or an art director in terms of how you visualize your work. The last thing here is kind of fun, and it's a little bit more simple, is just a simple gradient, okay, or continuum. So rather than do it in steps, you're just trying to work really light and just go darker and darker and darker as you go through it. Here's a little trick. If you have some smudged work around and you want to clean up some edges, you can go in there with the eraser. But if you want to be really clean, you can lay a piece of paper on there right up to the edge and use that as a mask to get to those edges and kind of clean it up really, really nice. So, you know, you're going to have some smudging. You're going to have a little dirt around. It's kind of hard to get in there where I kind of did it. I'll do one more. This one below here is a little bit dirty at the edge. So I go through here, put that paper down, and erase right over that edge. And bingo. You know, well, looks like I kind of creeped into here a little bit. So that's it. I'm not physically shading this. You're going to see there's a couple of videos to go through. Get in the habit of trying to hold the pencil more down than up. So for shading, the more that you can kind of strike the paper with the pencil more flat to the paper, it's easier to shade. The more that you're working this way and with a point, it's very hard to control that shading. We're not looking for perfection. It's an exercise. If you go through this and just do the best you can and get some good results, you'll obviously get a really good grade. So again, you know, I know there's limitations how well people handle this media that you might be used to. There's another little dirty spot here. I'm going to clean up a little bit. And that's it. I tend to talk too much, so I'll stop talking and let you guys do this and get to work with it. When you're done with this, remember, you're either going to try and scan this to make it into a file that you can upload, or take a photo on your phone. If you then you need to get that photo onto your computer and send this to me either as a JPEG or a PDF, or of course the scan that you do, and make sure there's a suffix on it that it's like .jpeg or .pdf. If it doesn't have that suffix, rumor has it that it'll mess up and it won't come through and be able to read well in Blackboard. And just to remind you that this is due Sunday night, the end of the night, 11:59 p.m. So you have some time. You can always email me. I'll try and see if there's emails. If somebody needs help with something, I can answer an email. If need be, we can even maybe go online for a couple of minutes. So that's it. Good luck. Enjoy. And hopefully you'll do real well with this first hands-on project.